What happens when the world's most important waterway, a choke point responsible for a fifth of the entire planet's oil supply, suddenly becomes a no-go zone? This isn't a hypothetical. It's playing out right now in the Strait of Hormuz. The gears of global commerce are grinding to a halt in this narrow corridor of water, not because of a formal blockade, but because of something far more insidious: fear. This is a real-time crisis, and the consequences are already starting to ripple across the globe. Right now, commercial ship traffic has plummeted. An untold number of colossal oil tankers and cargo ships are anchored in the Persian Gulf, waiting and watching. Why? Because Iran, in a shocking move of aggression, has made the threat so high it has paralyzed global shipping. A string of brazen attacks and the threat of naval mines have done what many thought was impossible. They've created a de facto shutdown of the Strait of Hormuz. The United States has already launched military strikes to stop a nightmare scenario from getting worse, but the fuse is lit. We're on the edge of a massive military escalation, and the price you pay for everything, starting with gasoline, is already on the rise. Here's how this single point of conflict is pushing the world toward a global crisis. This crisis exploded into view following a U.S.-Israeli strike on Iran on February 28th. The world braced for Tehran's response, and it came as a calculated strangulation of the world's economy. First came the warnings. Around the first week of March, Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, issued notices prohibiting vessel passage through the strait. It wasn't a total closure, but a strategic one. The IRGC began allowing selective passage for vessels from nations it deemed friendly, like China and India, creating a veneer of normalcy while traffic for many others came to a standstill. Words were quickly followed by violence. A campaign of asymmetric warfare began, with at least 21 confirmed attacks on merchant ships by March 12th. These weren't just warning shots. They were direct hits from drones and missiles that sent a clear message: no ship is safe. The attacks created an atmosphere of pure panic. Maritime insurance rates for the Persian Gulf skyrocketed, with many insurers withdrawing war risk coverage entirely, making it impossible for up to 80% of traffic to get insured. The risk was simply too high. This brought us to the final and most terrifying part of Iran's strategy: naval mines. Intelligence reports suggested that Iran had begun laying a few dozen mines in the strait. While Iran has an arsenal estimated at 5,000 to 6,000 mines, it doesn't take thousands to shut down the strait. The mere suspicion that even a small number of mines are present is enough to create a functional blockade. As the IRGC began mobilizing its fleet of small, fast attack craft for a mine-laying campaign, U.S. intelligence was watching. Washington was faced with a tough choice: let Iran contaminate the world's most vital waterway with explosives, or take preemptive action and risk a full-blown war. The decision was made. On March 10th, in a series of swift, targeted operations, the United States struck back. U.S. Central Command announced that its forces had destroyed 16 confirmed Iranian mine-laying boats. It was a decisive military action, designed not to start a war, but to stop the strait from becoming a permanent death trap that could take months or even years to clear. The American strikes were successful in one sense. They stopped the mass deployment of mines before it could begin. But in another, the damage was already done. The combination of Iran's threats, the confirmed attacks on shipping, and now a direct U.S. military strike on Iranian assets created the perfect storm of fear. The shutdown became a reality, enforced not by a physical wall of mines, but by a wall of unacceptable risk. The result is the scene we see today. Traffic through the strait has plummeted, by some estimates as much as 80 to 95%, with thousands of seafarers stranded. Regional port operations have been crippled. Iran may not have deployed its full arsenal, but its campaign of intimidation achieved the same outcome. The strait is effectively closed. Now, the United States and its allies face a daunting new challenge: proving the strait is safe enough for commercial traffic to resume. This is the painstaking, high-stakes work of mine countermeasures, MCM, and it has exposed a critical gap in the U.S. Navy's posture. The old workhorses of the fleet, the Avenger-class minesweepers, were decommissioned from the region in 2025. They were replaced by a new strategy centered on the littoral combat ship, or LCS. These ships, like the USS Canberra, are designed to operate from safer distances, deploying a suite of advanced unmanned systems to do the dangerous work. The process is futuristic. Unmanned surface vehicles, USVs, tow advanced sonar through suspected areas, mapping the seabed. Seahawk helicopters use laser systems to scan the water. If a mine-like object is found, a remotely operated vehicle, ROV, is sent to investigate and neutralize it. It's all done without putting sailors in the minefield. On paper, it's a brilliant solution. In reality, it's a race against time. The LCS fleet is small and spread thin. As this crisis unfolded, two of the key LCS vessels equipped for this mission, the USS Tulsa and USS Santa Barbara, were confirmed to be over 3,500 miles away in Malaysia and Singapore. A single ship cannot clear a waterway as vast as the Strait of Hormuz, especially when facing a potential mine threat. This capability gap is a central reason for the paralysis. The state-of-the-art tools needed to restore confidence are thousands of miles and many days away. Every day the strait remains functionally closed, the economic pressure builds. This crisis, happening half a world away, is already hitting home. The first and most immediate impact was on the price of oil. As news of the effective closure spread, the price of Brent crude surged past $100 a barrel. Natural gas prices jumped by over 60% in Europe. This is the market reacting to a simple fact. Nearly 20% of the world's oil and a huge portion of its liquefied natural gas, LNG, pass through that strait daily. Take that supply off the market, and prices have nowhere to go but up. To counter the shock, the International Energy Agency announced the largest ever release of emergency oil reserves in its history, a move designed to act as a time bridge for the global economy. But the fallout continues to cascade. The disruption chokes off the economic lifelines of major oil exporters like Iraq and Kuwait. For Europe, it raises the specter of a severe natural gas shortage as the continent relies heavily on LNG shipments from Qatar. And for Asia, it threatens everything from energy security to the production of semiconductors, which rely on helium from Qatar, a byproduct of LNG processing. Ultimately, a sustained disruption means higher shipping costs, higher manufacturing costs, and higher prices for consumers on almost everything. In the face of a crisis with such clear global implications, you would expect a unified global response. What we've seen instead has been hesitant and fractured, leaving the United States carrying much of the burden. President Trump baffled many analysts by responding to the crisis by lifting U.S. oil sanctions on Iran, likely a desperate gambit to calm surging oil prices. He also publicly scolded U.S. allies in Europe and Asia for their reluctance to commit naval assets to help secure the waterway, pointing out their heavy dependence on Middle Eastern oil. The response from allies was lukewarm. While a group of nations including the UK, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, and Canada issued a joint statement condemning Iran's actions, firm military commitments have been scarce. France has sent 2 frigates to escort vessels, and the UK has offered to send some advanced mine-sweeping drones, useful but limited contributions. The grand vision of an international armada sailing to reopen the strait has so far failed to materialize. Instead, the heavy lifting of military posturing and mine clearing is falling largely on the U.S. Navy. This is not the united front that has deterred aggression in the past. It's a dangerously divided response that could embolden Iran to escalate further. This is one of the most complex and rapidly evolving geopolitical crises in years. Understanding all the moving parts is critical. If you want to stay informed with in-depth analysis that cuts through the noise, make sure to subscribe and click that notification bell. We are in a dangerous new phase of this conflict. The Strait of Hormuz remains effectively closed, not by a confirmed sea of mines, but by a suffocating atmosphere of fear. Iran's aggression, met by a U.S. preemptive strike, has created a de facto blockade that is bleeding the global economy with each passing day. The United States may have stopped the worst-case scenario of a fully mined strait, but in doing so, it has initiated a tense and unpredictable military standoff. The world's economy is being held hostage in a 21-mile-wide stretch of water. The advanced tools needed to solve the problem are days away, and America's allies are mostly watching from the sidelines. The situation is a powerful reminder of how fragile our interconnected world is, where a single point of failure can trigger a global domino effect. The immediate question is no longer just about oil prices. The U.S. stopped the mines, but may have started a countdown to a much larger conflict. What happens when the first U.S.-escorted convoy attempts to break the blockade? And with its back against the wall, what is Iran's next move?